Hey, Julian, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm well, boss. I'm well. So you talked about so I saw in your comment you mentioned that so our debate slash discussion is going to be on how can we achieve peace.
Yes. Not the discussion I was hoping to have today, and outside of the tournament, so no one's confused. But glad to talk to you tonight. Uh, you're having a good night.
Sure. What you say you want to get to know me? What you said? I hear you.
You're doing well tonight. You can hear me okay?
Oh
And all
yes,
that, all
I'm
that good
doing
stuff.
well, man. I'm doing well. I can hear you pretty well, man. Yes, I can hear you. I'm doing well tonight. How are you, man? You good?
I'm doing pretty good. You're breaking up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and put on some earphones so I can hear you a little
Okay.
bit better. We have
Okay.
45 minutes, so
All right. Awesome. Now, so you want me to start off, or do you want to start off?
I start.
Okay, cool. Great.
Okay, so yeah, you're ready to get into it then.
Yeah, I'm
So
ready, man.
basically, okay, Israel has 90% of the landmass. As we mark 50 years of occupation, we need to shift the conversation to what peace looks like for every Palestinian,
You said
rather
he's.
than
Go
historical
ahead. Go ahead. I'm
difference.
sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Continue. I'm sorry. Continue. Continue. I'm sorry.
Okay, did you catch what I had there?
You said East Jerusalem.
I'm having some trouble hearing you.
You said East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem.
No, I haven't talked about East Jerusalem at all.
Okay.
I've said that 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 Israel controls 90% of the land. Have you ever seen this map? They have 90% of the land right now, and they've been occupying the land for 50 years as of yesterday. So the problem that we're talking about really isn't so much is it of a Palestinian state anymore. It's the problem of colonialism and apartheid. And I will explain the colonialism and apartheid as well as you would like me to. But does that make sense so far?
Yes, it does make sense. Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay. So when I say apartheid, do you debate this very often?
Yes, I definitely I have not debated the apartheid argument, but I have like had discussions about it where I disagree that there is an apartheid happening. But I want you to continue making your points, and then we'll see how we can start to like go like pinpoint where we disagree on, and we can discuss that
Okay.
further. All
Yeah,
right.
I don't have much longer to go. These are all the key points that the rest of the discussion is based on. So
All
you have a
right.
pretty clear idea. So the apartheid, it's actually a three-part indictment. So to really have a proper debate, I'll be sure to do this next time. I'd have to debate each count separately, but basically there's three counts. So the first count is that Israel in their constitution is defined as a Jewish state, and by that it has a majority of Jewish people. It's not a theocracy. It's not a Jewish state in that it's a theocracy, and then as a religious state, it's that it has an ethnic majority. So it's a Jewish state is in that it has a ethnic majority of people of that ethnicity.
Right.
So number two is that they have a military occupation inside the West Bank and a blockade of Gaza. Number three is that there's no right of return for refugees, and this is their private property that they're not allowed to go back to, and they haven't been compensated for either. And as far as colonialism, basically when all this started, the about 6% of the land was under Jewish control because they had already started migrating there in 1946, and then when the UN gave them permission to create a Jewish state in 47, it jumped to 55% for obvious reasons. And by 1967, 50 years ago, when they took the West Bank and Gaza, it was 78%. And as of last year, it was over 90%, and they had over 60% of the West Bank. And there's what's really important that I point out with the West Bank is that, as you can see, is they're colonizing. They're going in there and colonizing. I don't know how well you can see this. that
Yankee
that
Stadium.
that it's all split apart. It's all split apart. So that's the other problem. That's why it's so hard. It's one of the reasons why it's so hard to talk about this. And I'm really happy that I'll be talking about what solution's better with another debater who's great on this, who would be more on my side, more obviously, hopefully in the tournament soon. But yeah, so that all makes sense to you.
Yes, it definitely. I mean, I definitely hear your points, and they all definitely do. They do make sense, and I do agree, and I do disagree on certain points that you make. Now, before I begin and to start like really trying to address some of these questions, and you maybe open the door for you to challenge some of my points. You made a comment about refugees. I didn't really quite hear it clearly. Can you restate that over about
Okay,
the
so
Israel's treatment of refugees?
well, I'm not talking about the way that they treat refugees in my statement that I just said specifically. I'm just saying that the refugees do not have a right to return. So that some of them actually have lived in refugee camps their entire life. They cannot go back to their private property that was taken from them. But they have a right to go back there under the Geneva Convention, nor have they been compensated. They haven't been given money in return either. So they have a right to that under the Geneva Convention that isn't being fulfilled, and that's part three of the indictment.
Okay, I'm not too like well versed in that particular area that you're talking about, but I am well versed in the area of like the Palestinian refugees who came into Israel post like after the 1967 like when they defeated the six nations that invaded them, all the Muslim nations, and the Palestinians who were refugees, and they have fully been integrated into Jewish society. Now, comparing this to the Palestinian refugees who left Israel because of the Muslim leaders who claimed that Israel was not going to be like Israel was not going to be there for a year. They were going to be extinct. Those Muslim refugees who lived in Israel who left, they have not been fully integrated into Palestinian society. They're still in refugee camps. And my whole thing is that if you want to really address apartheid, I want to start with that because if you're going to say apartheid, you're going to have to say that in apartheid you are really like barring people from really having any sort of advancement based on their culture or based on their skin color. And when you say apartheid, I think of the South American apartheid. I mean, like you wouldn't have to have a Nelson Mandela if Africans were treated the same way Palestinians is Israel are treated, because Palestinians have a chance to be involved in political affairs in Israel. They're fully integrated. So this whole issue of apartheid, I mean, you would have to really address, like you would have to really understand the apartheid that the South Americans went through to really like see that the situation with the Palestinians in Israel is not really apartheid. It's the wrong. I mean, I would say it's not the proper assessment of the way that they're treated in Palestine. And
Okay.
now in regards to like how like Israel occupies most of the particular territories that you talk about, I personally see it like when I assess the history, I tend to see that when Israel has offered peace in like when they had offered land for peace, what one would expect was for them to receive peace. And what we've learned over the years is that Palestinians have used those territories to sort of build their base and to launch rockets into Israel. And so to have Israel occupy most of these territories, if this is the case, I would accept it because on various occasions, I'm gonna pinpoint in various occasions, and I'm gonna go with a liberal president now. This is a president who was very liberal. I'm gonna go with Bill Clinton. At the time when Arafat was around, he like when they went to have a conversation within the first 14 days of talking about how much land would they like in order to appease. On every negotiation that the president of Israel tried to negotiate with Arafat, every one of the comments he made was no. And Bill Clinton, who was literally there, said, "Hey, look, Arafat sat here for 14 days and literally said no to every offer that Israel made in regards to land." So this would force anyone to believe that this issue right now is not an issue about land. This is an issue of we must get rid of the Jews. You look at a Palestinian map; they don't have the Jews existing. The Jews are not even there. So their whole goal is to get rid of Israel. This is not an issue about land. So no matter how much land Israel takes over, do you have a comment?
Are you done?
No, not really. But do you want to inject? Do you want to say something?
Well, I mean, I'd rather you finish your statement.
Okay. Now I'm gonna look at in another issue. In 2005, Israel unilaterally left Gaza. Palestine did not develop their territory for good when they took over the Gaza. They didn't use the Gaza Strip for the good of the citizens, but they turned it into a terrorist base to launch rockets into Israel. That was in 2005. We're going to look in 2008. Prime Minister Omar went further than his predecessor, who was Barak. I'm talking of the Israel. He extended a peace offer to include additional land. Abbas, who was at that time the Palestinian leader of the PLO, he said no.
Okay, can I go ahead and ask you a question?
Sure.
How does that narrative achieve peace?
How does that narrative achieve peace? That narrative cannot achieve peace. You're definitely right. It cannot achieve peace. But in the reason why I bring up this case is that the strategy that the Palestinians have been using, it has to change in order for us to achieve peace. So they have to be first willing to say, hey, look, if you give us this land, we're not going to use it as a terrorist base, but we're going to use it as a means to say, hey, look, you're very serious about peace, and we're gonna be respectful of the two-state solution. But that narrative, the reason why I address that narrative is that we have to really address the historical efforts that have been made on the Israel side before we just automatically say, hey, look, Israel has been a colonial empire who's been taking over land, who's been harassing the Palestinians, and who have been doing apartheid in their particular state, because that is the particular case. And I have various occasions. I can go from bullet point to bullet point where you have an Israel leader making peace offers to Palestinians, and they constantly making the mention no. So how can we achieve peace? We have the current Palestinian leader should have international pressure put on him, where if he does not comply with the agreement that is on the table, where Israel is willing to offer as much land as they were willing to offer in the past, if he's not willing to take it, then the international community should be okay with just remaining objective to the whole case and allow Israel to take over more territory from the Palestinians, because it is pretty clear that they're not interested in peace.
Okay, do the Palestinians have a leader?
The Palestinians, they currently do have a leader. I can't quite remember the leader, but I believe the leader that met with the President Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago.
So do they have one leader or two?
That I'm not too certain of. I'm going to be honest.
Unified government. So must not have a unified government then, do they?
I'm not too sure about that either.
Okay.
I'm not too sure about that.
Well, I think the way to achieve peace is to identify why those people don't have rights. So the first of all, those refugees, they're treated like less than dirt. They live under a military occupation and they have no rights. But I'm not really talking about that so much as the fact that their land was taken from them at gunpoint and their house demolished, and they've had to live in a refugee camp their entire life in a situation like that. As far as, I think you mentioned the inside of Israel, you said in Israel they can vote and all this sort of thing. That's only about 20% of the Palestinians. The rest of them, those are the Palestinians that live within the proper borders of Israel. So those are the Palestinians that live in this white area. They only make up about 20% of the population.
Bring it up a little. Bring it up a little.
Okay, the Palestinians, they only make up 20%.
Bring the paper up a little. Yeah.
Oh, okay. They only make up 20% of the population, and that's the white area. You see that? They make up 20% of the population in the white area. So that means that 80% of the Palestinians that they have no rights at all. They have no rights at all. They live under military occupation. They have no rights. They actually are some of the most educated and hardworking people in the Middle East, but they don't have an economy because they live under a military occupation, and that's a little bit different in both territories. You mentioned the South African system, and the big thing, the reason that we call it apartheid, the word does come from South Africa, but the reason that the word apartheid is applied is because of international law, even though there are very specific comparisons that we can make. The first being that the problem is colonialism. The problem is colonialism. But it also, you have to note that 80% of the Palestinians can't vote. And then, but the big thing is that even those 20% of the Palestinians that can vote, so basically what people do is they just talk about one territory and they ignore the rest and make it sound okay. So these 20% that supposedly it's okay, only about a third of them actually are integrated with the Jewish community. And because it's defined as a Jewish state, that's why that's count one. They have an ethnic majority. So it's a racist state by definition. It has an ethnic majority. So it's like, if Hitler, if Hitler wanted to have an ethnic majority of white people, you would think that was racist, right? So they want to have an ethnic majority, right?
I mean, look, I wouldn't agree that that's the proper comparison to it. But you can continue making your point. I wouldn't agree.
It's an ethnic majority by law. That's racism. It doesn't matter. It could be. It's happened.
What law? What specific law in Israel? Like says.
It's in there. It's okay. Well, it's defined two ways. So it's in their constitution. It says in their constitution that it's a Jewish state, and it says in the Knesset. I'll put the exact. I'll put a link in the notes. It says in the Knesset how it's defined. It's in their law that no Palestinian who's elected, or even it doesn't matter if they're Jewish or whatever, who they are, they cannot change that it's a Jewish state. So by a Jewish state, what does that mean? It's an ethnic majority of people. It's not a theocracy. It's an ethnic majority of people, and they have no way to change that. So they have no way of fighting back against their oppressors. So there's an ethnic majority in law that they can't change. So that's okay. Well, let me finish, because you brought up a lot of points. I listened to you, and I really think you should listen to me.
I'm sorry,
because I'm trying to explain how we get to peace, and I think that's important.
Definitely.
The thing is that the PLO and all the Palestinian organizations, even Hamas, has come out and they've recognized Israel, and all the Arab states that are fighting Israel, the ones they have offered peace to Israel as well. If they would just stop doing harm to the Palestinians and live as a democracy like they claim they are. So as far you try to, and I think there's something I really want to distinct here, and because this was in the article that I read, and I don't really see myself as being on the left. I see myself as very centrist. I know most of the people I talk to on here, they see this as a left thing and a left right thing. It's really not. And I don't know how you get through to the right. That's one of the things I'm trying to find out with these debates, is how I get, because the left they are starting to come through on this. And I don't want to criticize anyone on the left because I think for doing that, because I think it's a good thing. So, but it's not a left right thing at all. It's just I can see why the people on the left are being turned on to this, but I'm trying to find some ways to get through to folks on the right. So yeah, and yeah, they all want peace. And the thing is that they're both nationalists. They both have a very, well, they're not all nationalists, but they both have. There's a lot of nationalism on both sides, and that's part of the problem here. So they both want all the land. Both sides want all the land. I would favor the Palestinian. I favor the Palestinians because the Palestinians, no matter what argument you want to make, is it the Palestinians' fault that the Holocaust happened? Did the Palestinians do the Holocaust?
No, they didn't. And and that's not the and that's really not the issue of whether or not they were responsible for the Holocaust or not. That no, that is not what it really is about. This is about, and I've met Palestinians who lived in Palestinian refugee. I'm not gonna say Palestinians. I met a Palestinian, a man. He was raised in Palestinian refugee camp, and he talks about the indoctrination that he was exposed to as a child. And so one of the ways we can achieve peace is on the Palestinian side is to stop indoctrinating the Palestinian kids about how they must not acknowledge Israel as a state, how they must celebrate the murder of Israelis, and the indoctrination is so unreal. Like, and to really modify their textbooks so that their textbook doesn't have all this anti-Jew propaganda being fed to them from the time they were young. That feeds into this. Huh?
What textbook is that?
Well, many of the textbooks that they're taught in schools and even
Whose
prime
textbook?
ministers. Huh?
They all have this textbook.
Yeah, they have a history textbooks. Yeah,
at the UN school. At the UN school.
It's in every school in the Palestinian territory. So as Palestinian kids are being raised, they're being taught to hate the Jews, and it's really an indoctrination where they're taught that the Jews are evil people. They thought that, hey, look, you must kill the Jews, you must celebrate Jewish deaths. Okay. And so this Palestinian I met, he talked about how he grew up hating the Jews. And it wasn't until he eventually, finally met a Jew. He had never met a Jew and he hated Jews. And so he talked about he finally met a Jew. He met this Jew. The Jew was washing his feet and was treating him with such care inside of a hotel in Israel. And it was then that he started to have a really different mentality on the propaganda he was exposed to. So that's one of the ways we can achieve peace, is to get the Palestinian authorities to modify the education of their students, to stop teaching them this, to remove the anti-Israel propaganda off their textbook. That way you can have a generation, even if it's not this generation that's here now, a fresh generation that is coming to the negotiation table. If we can't achieve peace now, but they'll have a more open mind, so it's willing to negotiate peace with Israel rather than being raised in a propaganda-filled, hate-filled Jewish school.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I have a couple of questions. If someone teaches child hate, no matter what ethnicity they are, if they teach a child hate, does that speak for everyone of that ethnicity? Let's just assume any population of the United States and the United States.
No, it won't speak to everyone, but if they're exposed to it at a younger age and there is no other argument to sort of counteract that, then that's all they've been fed. So that's all they will believe in, and they will act out on those beliefs. That's what I'm saying. But no, it doesn't speak.
But it's not everyone though, right? Is it really every member of that ethnicity believes that? Does every member of that ethnicity believe that? Every member of that group believes that though, because one person does.
If you're raised in Palestine, there's a pretty high chance that you will be raised with a anti-Jewish filled perspective on the whole Israel-Palestinian conflict, and if you ever are blessed to be in a position of leadership, you will use that to justify your reason for not wanting to accept peace with Israel.
Okay, what map is Palestine on?
What map is in the Middle East?
Can you show me a map that says Palestine in a textbook or anywhere on Google? Could you go to Google Maps and show me Palestine on from Google Maps on your phone?
You see, I know you was gonna ask me like to show you a map. No, I don't.
So you can't pull out your phone and type "where is Palestine" on maps and show me Palestine. Can you do that?
Sure, I can definitely try to do that. Definitely. Okay, well, it's not on the map necessarily.
Wipes off the map.
Huh?
Been wiped off the map. No one's talking. I didn't even know about this till 5 years ago. And I've been to college. I read
Wait,
the
in
Wall Street
fact,
Journal and the New York Times every day, and another newspaper.
you probably won't be able to see it.
Does it say Palestine? Does it say Palestine? Okay.
Yes, it says,
Okay. Well, it's not on Google Maps. It's not. What service is that? Because it's not on Google Maps.
it's on I don't know, freeworldmaps.net. It shows Palestine and Israel. It shows is and after that it's in Palestine is the West Bank. You have Jerusalem, East Jerusalem. In fact, East Jerusalem. You have Hebron, and you have all these different territories
Well,
in
that's
Palestine.
the West Bank. But the thing is, though, uh, okay, so it doesn't come up on Google Maps anymore, and
It
that's
does
why I
come up.
said
It
Google
actually
Maps.
does. It comes up. It's on
That's
free
not
world
Google
map.
Maps though. You just said it wasn't Google Maps.
Google. All right. No. Let,
The
let,
thing
let me
is
check.
though, the thing is, there that is that Israel is colonizing inside the West Bank, and they were colonizing inside Gaza, but yes, they pulled out. They still have a blockade of it, but they're colonizing and they're splitting these territories apart. These are the territories that they want to take. Gaza, that's just a concentration camp, basically. They want this West Bank territory for a lot of reasons, and it's all split apart. So even though it says that the West Bank is Palestine, 60% of it is Israel, and they have a blockade.
I
Another
actually
thing that you
found.
mentioned.
I actually found the map on Google Map. I actually found it.
Okay,
I
but
found the map of
does it
Palestine.
say Palestine though? Does it say Palestine?
Yes, it says Palestine. Look, it says right here.
Okay, well that's all the land though. That shows all the land when some of the lands is Israel, and that's not on Google Maps. That's actually from like Wikipedia or something. That's just a picture that comes up because it just says Palestine. It doesn't define where the Israeli territories are either. Another. Let's just move along. Another another thing that you brought up is you said that, and this came up in another debate. You said that the Israelis gave land back. Who did they give land back to?
Who did they give land back to? They gave
Yeah.
land to. Okay, they gave land to the Palestinians. They offered up land to the Palestinians and like the West Bank.
Well,
The
you
West
said that
Bank.
Bill Clinton offered
Right.
Yasser Arafat land, but
Yes.
before you said that though, you said that they
No.
had given up land many times.
Yes. On various
I was,
occasions. On various occasions,
when
they
did
had given
they?
up.
They were going. They said that they would give up land, or they actually gave land.
They
Which
actually
one is
gave
it?
land. They actually gave land.
Okay, and who did they give it to?
They gave it to the Palestinians.
You gave it to the Palestinians when?
Correct. In exchange for peace.
In exchange for peace. When was this?
Okay. You have. Hold on. Give me a second. Because I actually recorded this. Give me a second. I'm gonna look for it right now.
Was it in 2005? Is that what you're looking
One of
for?
them was in 2005, but there are other accounts that I actually copied it on notes. But it's just that I'm looking through other points that I wanted to make, but it's like you address one point and then there's another point and there's another point, and so it's hard to really like figure out.
Okay.
Should we just address this point, or because there's various points we can hit, the very points that you hit that I never got the chance to respond to.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, go ahead and you want to go ahead and do a response then? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, I would like to respond, but I
Okay.
don't, but I definitely want to answer. I definitely want to provide the accounts though. I mean, if I could, let me see,
Okay.
let me
There's
just
only
find it.
about. Okay. I'll be patient. There's only about 15 minutes left though. So.
I know I'm trying. Okay, we're gonna start from 1914. During the breakup of the Ottoman Empire after World War One. Now the British took over most of the Middle East in 1918, and in 1936, I don't know if you're aware, the Arabs rebelled against the British occupation. The Peel Commission allowed the British to give Arabs 80% and Jews 20%. The Arabs rejected it. Now again, I know this is not Israel offering. This is the UN offering up the land, and they offered Arabs 80%. They offered the Jews 20%. The Arabs rejected it. Um, the Jews actually accepted this offer. Um, and in 1947, the UN divided the land two states. The Jews accepted. The Arabs rejected it. This time with an all-out war. You have the 1967 the Arab League Summit in Sudan, issuing their policy. In the 1967 Arab League Summit in Sudan, Palestine said that their new policy was going to be no peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiation with Israel, historically known as the three no's. That's what that particular point in history is known as, the three no's. In 2000, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak met at Camp David with PLO leader Arafat. Barak offered all of Gaza and 94% of the West Bank and East Jerusalem as the capital of East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, and they rejected. And the peace treaty with Israel in 1978. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That's not part of it. That's not a part of it. I'm sorry.
Okay, basically, you're saying that the Arabs kept turning down these great peace offers. Is that what that's what you're trying to tell me?
I'm not saying. Look, I'm not saying they were great peace offers, but they were an offer to sort of establish peace and really to do away with this conflict. But it was rejected every time.
Okay. Well, it's the part of this conversation. Part of my burden of evidence here is that I have to prove. Okay. What I'm trying to prove is that basically what I'm trying to say here is that if I try to tell you that my version of history is better than your version of history here, that I know something that you don't, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. And I know when I debated this before. Trying to talk about all the history and read all that's just people get bored to death with that. They don't like that.
No, but I'm giving you accounts.
It turns people off and it doesn't advance the peace narrative. But the thing is, I'm not going to explain every conflict and how Israel was the aggressor and always has been since the very beginning. And because the Holocaust is not the Palestinians' fault, and so forth and so on. But we're not talking about peace, and those deals that you're talking about, they weren't good for the Palestinians because it didn't solve this issue of apartheid or colonialism. Maybe the colonialism, but not so much the apartheid. And the thing is, let me finish, sir. That it did not give the refugees the right to return. It didn't satisfy count 3. It didn't satisfy count 1. It was still an ethnic majority Jewish state. They had no right to media. They didn't have a right to free speech. They couldn't have their own media. Israel controlled all the resources. This is a desert, so that means how much water they can drink. They still controlled that. So basically, it just brought things above ground in a way that wasn't fair to the Palestinians. It didn't answer the question of apartheid on 2 counts. It only answered one of 3 counts, which was the occupation. It didn't answer for the refugees, and it didn't answer for the majority Jewish state, and it also just wasn't fair as far as resources and governing goes, because it was a Jewish state where it had ethnic majority that control all these resources and the laws and so forth and so on. So basically, it's like black people agreeing that to the Jim Crow South, as long as someone's not holding a gun, as long as they don't have to be slaves anymore. That's basically the equivalent of that deal.
Oh wow. Okay. I mean, your point is well taken. Your point is well taken, and I'm not laughing at your intellect. That's not what I'm smiling about. I was just smiling because this is so common. I hear this so often. This is why I'm just like, wow. This is just like it's like I'm talking to this is so common to hear, especially in this generation. But I'm not laughing at your intellect, and I hope you don't think I'm laughing at your intellect. Not at all.
I'm not a leftist, so
I'm not saying you're a leftist. It's just so common to hear those arguments. It's so common to hear it, and whether I mean, and I agree with you. It's not a leftist argument. It's not something about leftists. It's just a general perception. I mean, I would say most people have about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's just fascinating how the speech patterns are just so accurately the same. I mean, that's just in my personal take. When I have discussions with people, they make the same.
How are they the same?
They're the same in regards to apartheid and a lot of the points you made that I'm not going to try and summarize because you are like.
Well, it's a legal case.
Huh?
It doesn't matter who says it. If it's a legal case, if someone's making a legal case, it doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter. They're all going to make. We're all making the same case. It's a legal case. It's drawn out in many documents. So it's not. I mean, it's not completely organic. I came up with it myself, pretty much. I mean, just through things that I was hearing, like this is what's wrong with this, and then so other people can explain it better than I can, is that it's specifically 3 counts. So it's not completely organic.
Now you made a lot of comments about apartheid. Now I really want to address the apartheid, and I just want to address a couple comparisons to the apartheid in South Africa versus the perceived apartheid that is, I mean, happening in Israel. And I'm just gonna.
Okay, but you're really not advancing your case. You're just coming up with new arguments, and you're not really advancing any points. You're definitely not advancing how we're going to get the peace here. But you can go on.
I thought I made a point earlier. I don't know if you agree with it. I talked about stop the indoctrination of the Palestinian kids. I mean, wouldn't you agree that would be a great starting point?
I didn't catch all that. I'm sorry.
Stop teaching the Palestinian students the anti-Israel propaganda from the time they're young. Wouldn't that be a great start to really have both parties to agree that?
That's just a very biased opinion that doesn't account for all the Palestinians. They don't have a unified government. They don't even have a unified school system. I can't even go on Google Maps and see where Palestine is. No one's taught about this. This is an issue that affects every American, and most people don't even know about it. I didn't know about it until 5 years ago.
I learned about it 4 years ago, actually. So yeah, we learned about the right time. But let me just address. I just want to address the apartheid. Can I just address the apartheid? Because I feel like it's only fair that you got to mention it, that I actually address it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, now I have a
I'm here to talk at you.
Huh?
Go ahead. I'm just saying, I'm here to talk at you. Like, I see this as more of a conversation than like the tournament debate where we got to really throw it out there and try to win.
Definitely.
So
yeah. So now I'm just giving you accounts here. I'm giving you documented accounts that I've documented. And it's not something about opinion. So now in Israel, there are judges in Israel courts. And I have them by name. We have George Kara Salim. We have Jubran. These are examples. These men are not Jewish. In apartheid South Africa, you would never have that, where you have judges in Israel who are not Jewish. In Israel, in apartheid South Africa, if you were not white South African, you could not be a judge as a black South African. You could not be a judge. Another account.
That's Israel, actually part. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. You have non-Jewish teachers teaching Jewish children in Israel. Non-Jewish teachers teaching Jewish children in Israel. In apartheid South Africa, you cannot have black South Africans teaching white South African students. You have the non-Jews in Israel have everything non-whites in apartheid South Africa never shared with white South Africans. So how is it that we can continue to push this apartheid propaganda without substantiating it with the very source of what of people who really experience apartheid in South Africa? You cannot validate the comparisons. You cannot show me an example of apartheid happening in South Africa and provide that same example in Israel. You just can't do it. You just have to use the term.
Actually, it's very easy, because the mistake that you're making on both of those counts with the teachers and the judges is that you're only talking about one territory. And this is the same problem in South Africa, where it was split into different territories, and the conversation was focused only around one territory. So even though 20% of the Palestinians enjoy rights within the proper Israel borders, the Palestinians that live in this white zone, they may enjoy those rights. But the Palestinians who live in another zone, just like South Africa, don't enjoy any rights, and they certainly can't vote or anything like that. They live under military occupation. They probably can't even, if they were to go out, there's probably, I don't know if it's night there right now, but if they were to go outside, they'd probably risk death. I mean, that's literally how they live.
Now, what specific territories? What territories don't we have that that like that
What's
fairness,
okay? So
that
so you're
integration?
talking about
No, no,
the
just
white.
name the area
You're
has to
talking
have a
about the
name.
white zone.
Does it have a
You're
name?
not accounting for the green area. So, I'm sorry.
What's the name
You're
of
not
the area?
accounting for the green area. You're only talking about the
Just
area that
showing
you
me.
see in white. You're not
All
accounting
right,
for the area
no
that's in
disrespect,
green. The
Julian.
area in red is a little bit different.
Julian, no disrespect, but these green lands have to have a name. They have to have they have to have
It's
cities
Gaza
that.
and the West Bank. All the settlements, all the Israeli territories have different names in the
So
West
in
Bank.
Gaza and the
Gaza.
West Bank, you don't have integration of non-Jews in Jewish society. That's what you're telling me.
No, it's a Jewish only zone. So they go in there, they say, "Hey, you're the wrong ethnicity. You got to go, or we're gonna kill you." And then they knock down their people's house and they build their own. They build a big wall and they build their own colony that's only for their people, and that's how it works there. And if you don't, and you have no right to return there, and yeah, that. It's a military zone. So if you're not Jewish, you can't go there.
Just
They
name
might
those two
let me
cities
in because I'm
again.
an
Just name
American.
those two cities again that this happens in. Name
They're
those two.
not cities. They're territories.
Okay, name those two
Gaza and
territories
the
again.
West Bank. 80% of the Palestinian
So
for the
according to
Palestinians live in Gaza.
according to your assessment, in Gaza and in the West Bank, there is no integration of non-Jews in Israel, and that's across the board.
Gaza and the West Bank are the Palestinian territories.
So
If you're
where
talking
does
about Israel proper, that's 20% of the Palestinians, and only about a third of them are integrated with the Jewish population. So 2/3 of the Palestinians are segregated inside Israel. 1/3 is integrated, but 2/3 aren't, and that's only 20% of the population. The other 80% lives in the Palestinian territory, and they have no rights. We're at 3 minutes. So maybe we should go ahead and close up. But I don't know if you want to interject something in there before we do that, but just please mind the time.
Go ahead. You can close it. I mean, you can make your closing statements.
Okay, well, actually, I think this has been a very productive conversation because the point of this is that for one side, it doesn't matter what side it is, they just say this is my version of history, and it's black and white, and you have to accept my side of history, and the other person to say this is my side of history. That just goes in one ear and out the other. There's no way to progress. So even though we didn't agree. I think that focusing the issue on apartheid and maybe discussing why that's apartheid and the injustice that is being brought upon here, and why that is important. And so I'm glad that we talked about that. And as far as your case, I don't think you really talked about peace, but we did hear the other side of the narrative, but basically, I don't really hear about peace here. I don't really hear about a solution that accounts for 80% of the Palestinian population is forgotten here because they can't vote. They can't vote for that judge. If they have a teacher, it's through the UN. It's through the United States. It's through my taxpayer dollars. They don't have their own government. They don't have an opportunity to have an economy, and it's because of U.S. aid. And because we both actually kind of agree here because we both say one state, but I think, and when you say one state, you just think that the Palestinians don't deserve one, and they don't deserve anything, and that as opposed to one state where they do have rights. And that's why I say maybe it's time to talk about a one state solution, because it changes the focus away from if we'll see a Palestinian state or not. And you have 40 seconds. I'm sorry. Go on.
Um, I'm just gonna close and just provide I just want to say that the best way to achieve peace is to, number one, have Palestinians agree that they won't indoctrinate students anymore in their schools. Number two, begin to really be sincere about when Israel gives up land, they're not going to take this land and use it as a terrorist base. Number
They've
two,
never given up.
and number three, we have to adjust time.